Every man has his heroes, and every life is made up of stories. Heroic Stories is a series from heroicmen.org to find out why some men choose the harder path in life, even when it means losing everything, how they survived, and who they are today. These men seem heroic to us, even if they don't call themselves that. They seem to have an extra strength in their system, extra grit to battle doubt and find purpose. All of these men are seeking divine friendship with God, and they all believe in building up faith, building up men, and building up our future. Sponsored by CatholicSpeakers.com and hosted by Dominic from Heroic Men, get the mindsets, the scars, and the playbooks that these men have earned the hard way. Heroism isn't born, it's made, and these are their stories. Hi gents, and welcome back to Heroic Stories. I'm your host Dominic from Team Heroic Men, joined today by Sam Halligan from myforge.org. Hi Sam, how are you?
Good, Dominic. How are you doing this morning, or I guess this afternoon?
Excellent. We're here to talk about heroism, right? It's kind of a big deal, and especially as young men, we're always looking for great examples, and I'm fascinated to sit down with a variety of different kinds of men and ask, what does it mean for you to be a hero? Like, how are you trying to get up to something heroic in your life? And every single guest who comes on has a different point of view and has a roster of different stories that orient them in life and give them a sense of direction. And so your turn on the hot seat. I'd love to kick off with our first question. It's a chance to meet the man behind the mission. It's kind of how this goes. What is a story of heroism that absolutely lights you up? And it could be, as I said, from media, it could be from the news, could be from movies or history or anything you like.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think, as you asked the question, I'm actually looking at a wall right now that I've got this thing that I call a vision board that's right in front of me. It's something I look at when I work, and it's got all these different pictures, like physical pictures of people, things that remind me of the different arenas of my life that I want to succeed in and become the best version of myself. And oftentimes, it's the inspiration of the stories of other men that have gone before us. So the one that's kind of most readily available to me right now, and one that I've been thinking about, is a book that I'm reading through right now. So it's a story of Ernest Shackleton. So I don't know if you're familiar with the English explorer. Have you heard of Ernest Shackleton before?
Let's assume that I don't, because I actually know basically nothing. So yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. I mean, I think just on, I think had a Christian background, not a crazy devout Christian. It's not a story of his Christian faith, but it's a story of masculine leadership in a lot of ways. So he is right around the turn of the 20th century, 1912 to 1915. Is kind of when the story takes place, but he's an English expedition guy. So he takes a group of men, I think it's like 25 guys, on a Antarctic expedition. So to this point, the South Pole had never been discovered, had never been explored, had never been taken out.
This is roughly when? This is like what, 1810, 1890?
Actually, just 1912. Yeah, 1912 to 1915. Wow. Yeah, so relatively recently. Yeah. And so, Ernest Shackleton. So he is going on this dangerous mission, and basically he puts out this ad in the newspaper. So he puts an ad in the English newspaper that he's looking basically for doctors, looking for a variety of men, doctors, crewmen, experienced sailors, but then just people who will be crew hands. And so he's looking for about 25 men in it, and he's limited to the little section of the newspaper. But basically, it says something like dangerous men wanted. Dangerous mission, very little pay, success of return unlikely, upon return great notoriety and fame, or something like that.
Right.
And he had a line basically a mile long waiting at his door for guys to interview and to experience it. So without giving too much away of the story, they go down this long awaited expedition, and their ship gets caught in these ice floes, and so it won't go anywhere, and they have to sit on the ice for over 6 months, and they're going through their rations, and they're over 500 miles from any inhabitable land. And so it's this mission of leadership that this guy's entrusted with, of being able to keep an entire crew alive, sane, and to get them, hold the vision to get them back to their homes and survive. And so I'm midway through the story right now. There's just these moments of astounding leadership, of listening to this guy. I'm like, man, to be able to paint a vision, hold the vision in the midst of highs and lows and hills and valleys. Like, I think especially those that are called to leadership, can understand it's a very difficult task to be able to say, man, like to be a leader can be very, very difficult. So anyway, Ernest Shackleton, the book's called Endurance. It's a phenomenal story. So that's what I'm going through right now. Yeah,
That's
I'm reading
amazing.
that. And that's, the story that I would say I am inspired by most recently.
That's fantastic. Yeah, our partner up in Canada, Sean Lynn, who runs Heroic Men Canada, absolutely loves that story. He's a big,
Yeah.
big burly Santa Claus ex-policeman kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he loves that sort of story. Okay, so why does that story speak to you, Sam?
It's a good question.
What's in you about it?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, I think for me, with my work with Forge, so much of my mission is to be able to capture the attention and capture the hearts of men to see that their life is worth living and to live it to the full, right? I think there's a lot of things that are capturing the hearts of men right now, whether it's, fame, success, popularity, money. Like there's things that are vying for the attention of a man's heart. And every man has the same number of hours in a day. We all live the same amount of days in a week. And people have to decide, what am I going to give my life to? What am I going to give my time to? And I think for me, what that story really does is like Ernest Shackleton is taking men on an adventure. He's taking men on a journey to get from point A to point B. And a lot of life is from point A to point B, right? We're born into life, but then our destination is eternal life, right? There's this journey that we're going through. And a lot of that story of everyone's life has to be kind of shepherded by or guided by men along the journey that help kind of guide and shape and mold the lives of people. So I think for me, it just kind of speaks to this heart of leadership, of being able to cast a vision, to be able to invite men into a story. And then when life's going, haywire, to be able to help hold that vision. There was something I reflected on yesterday in just a little Instagram post that I think is a worthy reflection, but I kind of shared that, in the story of Endurance, this book, about Ernest Shackleton, there becomes this point where basically it's pointless for these guys to stay on the boat. The boat is caught between these ice floes. It's sat there for 6 months, and he has to make the hard call as a leader of, hey guys, we're going to die if we stay here. Like we've got a daunting journey ahead of us of having to get 500 miles to the nearest inhabitable land, but we got to cut and get into the fight essentially. So, he makes a hard call. And then he basically says, okay, listen, if we have any chance of survival, we've got to cut everything that's dead weight out of our life. So he's telling them, hey, you can only take, some of these guys brought journals from their, journals and diaries from their wives or their grandmas or pictures of their kids or whatever. He's like, anything that's not necessary needs to stay on the boat. Like you can't bring it because you're going to get exhausted over this like next 6 to 12 months of trying to get to cover 500 miles. And he leads by example. He throws down like the memory that he shares is throwing down this gold-plated lighter, this gold-plated cigarette holder. He takes a Bible that the Queen of England gave him, and he took out an important page and then left the Bible there. And he has like three things to his hand, and then the rest of the men follow suit. They drop everything that's unnecessary and they go about the journey. And I think for me, it's just kind of like, wow, you know what? How much of that is the call to us as Christian men to be able to see our life is a journey, that we've got to cut the dead weight out of our life that's not going to help us on that journey to get into our ultimate destination. So I think it was just an inspiring story to me of thinking about, okay, for my life, for the men that I serve, for the men that are listening to this, like there are things in our life that are going to weigh us down, or they're going to be things that keep us from reaching our ultimate destination, right? And those things have to go. And so to be able to be a man of sacrifice, a man truly, truly being able to step into the fullness of who a man is created to be, which is a man who is self-sacrificial, and to be able to really, experience that heavenly homeland, which only comes through shedding of the things of the world. So that's kind of a little bit of the story and why it inspires me.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know you said you haven't finished the book, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Do you know if they all made it back? And second, do you know if they ever reclaimed or recovered the ship and all of the stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. So good question. I believe, don't quote me on this because I haven't finished it, but I believe that they didn't lose any of the men. So I think that's part of the lore of the story, is that this man who really is no different from any of us, right? I think we can sometimes see these grandiose figures like a George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Ernest Shackleton and think, oh man, these guys are just like God sent. They're just, enormous men that I could never become like. And it's like, no, actually every single person has the ability to make something of himself through God's grace, right? There's there's the ability. I mean, I one of my favorite quotes, I have it on my board here, is who you are is God's gift to you. Who you become is your gift back to God, right? There's this
that's
ability of free will. Like every single one of us, you can grow in skill sets of leadership. You can grow in mindsets and being able to, through actual experience of being able to become a man that men are willing to follow, and also can go through hard things. So I do believe that they all kind of make it back. And he ends up having a prolific career for the rest of his life of traveling from universities all throughout Europe, telling the story of the endurance and how did these men survive, and how, I mean, the story is crazy. I mean, they sit literally for 6 months in the Antarctic winter, which is, the sun never rises.
Okay, hold
like
on,
it's
wait a
completely
second.
dark. Yeah.
I'm just going to be really annoying and ask for clarification. You said the Antarctic or the Arctic Circle? Because where do they trek to? Because
The South Pole. Yeah, the South Pole.
so
Which I
in the
believe
South
is
Pole, and then they're walking to where?
they're just trying to get back to some inhabitable land because they have no boat now. So basically they've got the life rafts from the boat, and they're trying to get to a place where they can actually get on water because they're stuck on ice. So there's basically 500 miles of ice before they can actually get on the water and try to get to some sort of inhabitable land. So they're stuck there and make it back, but they never make it back to the ship. The ship is actually sunk. There's pictures of it in the book, but yeah, it's a pretty astounding story. Yeah.
Amazing. So you've already started drawing, from this story, specific things that can be applicable, that can apply to us today. There's a great, sense of brotherhood or camaraderie between our two brands, between Forge and between what Heroic Men is doing. And we're convinced that our working definition of heroism is a man who steps outside of himself and his immediate needs, which are not bad things. But if you're going to try to be a heroic man, it's about doing a little more than just meeting your basic needs. And so then what are those extra things that you get up to? And it's hitting at some of the stuff that you're talking about here. So we're convinced that, daily prayer is a thing, weekly. And so we're codifying it into an identity. Like, what are you talking about? What do I do? Okay, here we go. Daily prayer, weekly outreach to somebody in your circle, especially a brother who matters to you, part of your shield wall, right? And then thirdly, every month outreaching to somebody new. Now, in our case, we're inviting them to take a pledge to do this every single day, do this consistently. So that heroism isn't just an ideal, but is something tactical that you can do daily. As you're looking at this kind of, the work that you do at Forge, but more specifically, looking at this story that you just shared, if you were to list some of the behaviors or mindsets that really come out of this and turn into a simple sort of list, like, what's really yelling at you? Like, this is stuff that we need to find our own way of implementing in the parish or in the workplace, just at home, to start getting back to being these kind of bolder men who are maybe a little larger than life because they do something that's like 1%, 10%, a little more, coloring outside the lines than just the normal tried and true.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think let's start to tease that out a little bit. I think for me, there's a million things people could say, right? Everyone's got different ideas of what masculinity could look like, or their values that they hold for themselves. And I think just to maybe name a few and kind of get into it, I'm sure a great discussion will ensue. Is the thing that comes to my mind immediately is really kind of like sacrifice. Like, there's got to be a man who is living fully alive. There has got to be a deep commitment to sacrifice. Like, I mean, I think when we're young men, there's a reality that a lot of young men don't have a whole lot of commitments in their life, right? You have, whether it's you're a college student, like, you've got your classes that you take, and then there's an appropriate degree of responsibility, I think, right? You go, I don't hand my 6-year-old boy right now, like, hey, you've got to take care of the house, because it would be inappropriate, right? He needs to be a son. And then you take on these different responsibilities and you learn what is it like to be a man of sacrifice and to be a man of responsibility. But there becomes a point where you can't ignore this anymore. And I think about this, there's a really like powerful moment in my life. I was going into my senior year of college. I went to Benedictine College down in Atchison, Kansas. And I was going into my senior year, and I remember I was presented with a question, and that was, I either overload my senior year with taking 23 credits in the fall and taking 21 credits in the spring in order to graduate on time, or I spread them out over the course of 3 semesters and just kind of enjoy the last, year, and then subsequently another semester, graduate in December of the following year. I was having this conversation with my mom, and I just had, I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit or if it was just a moment of kind of conviction, but I just told my mom, I said, life's never going to get any easier for me. Like there's this truth that like, if I could say no to taking more credits and I could just graduate the following year, but there was this willingness, this desire within my heart of like, no, I want to do a hard thing right now. Like I want to engage in suffering and I want to engage in sacrifice because I believe that this is actually integral to my heart as a man to sacrifice for something. And it's amazing because that moment, I mean, I think about hard moments in young adult life. I think about young moments as an engaged man, as a young married man, as we had our first kid, as we had our second kid, as we had our third kid, and these different moments that I can look back to and be like, whoa, because of that moment, there was a ripple that occurred throughout my life of I'm willing to choose the hard thing, choose the sacrificial thing. And this is, a very popular thing, even in the midst of non-Christian men's influencers a little bit, right? There's this kind of the do the hard things movement. I don't know if you've experienced this at all, but you've got all these different kind of Christian influencers, but then also kind of secular influencers that are on social media that are kind of, it's like the David Goggins thing. I don't know if you've ever followed David Goggins or Jocko Willink, but
no.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Jocko Willink by just the name, but
Yeah. And, David Goggins is, I believe he would identify as a Christian, but he swears a lot. He's a a pretty impressive man, but his whole thing is kind of do the hard thing. Like you have got more in you than you're willing to give. And I think that's probably one of the things that I think when I think about men right now in the culture, what do I wish men would do more? And I don't think this comes from like a judgmental standpoint, because I think I'm doing this through my own life too, of you're actually capable of way more than you think you are. Right? Like men listening to this, like you are way more strong. You are way more mentally fit. You are way more, courageous. Like there's a grit that I think we need to rediscover in the heart of man that is actually capable of much more than what we sometimes expect of men. And so I think, that kind of immediately comes to my mind as being like a man of sacrifice, because when we can come to acknowledge that as a core identity piece in the heart of a man, that's where, okay, providing for my family makes more sense. Like these long hours make more sense, or these hard moments of doing things I don't want to do make more sense because it's onto something. Like my sacrifice isn't just for sacrifice sake. It's because I, as man, am called to sacrifice, right? I'm called to give of my life in a deeper way. And you think about that both in the prototype of Adam, but also in the fullness of the revelation of man in Jesus. It's like the highest moment of Jesus's life was a moment of sacrifice. He's extended on the cross, arms out, feet down, nailed to the cross in agony. And that was the most fruitful moment of Jesus's ministry, was a moment of self-sacrifice. So I think if I could kind of just start there, I think that's one of the most important things that I think when men can get sacrifice right in their lives, that's where I think a lot of the things begin to fall into place, of being able to prioritize your life through the lens of how can I sacrifice my life for my wife, for my children, for my vocation, for whatever these things are that are you're held responsible to.
Mm-hmm. How would you define sacrifice? Because it can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, and a lot of us probably have a bad taste in our mouths with it. New Year's resolutions, Lent or something, and it's all ashes and whatever. Mm-hmm. How do you make sense of it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it has to be seen in and through the lens of a lifestyle and not just a season. I think that's kind of one of the troubles with things like New Year's resolutions, right? It's okay. I'm gonna do this. You get all gassed up. I'm gonna go do this thing, and then it doesn't get seen in light of like a core identity piece of the heart of man. So I think when I think of sacrifice, if I'd be willing to kind of put a definition to it, I guess I would probably say that sacrifice is ultimately a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual act of self-gift to another person, right? It could be any of those elements. It could be a spiritual sacrifice. It could be a physical sacrifice. But it's an engagement in some sort of tension that demands that you give something more than just your baseline. And I think I'm going to put my finger on it. That's where I think we get into trouble in a lot of men's culture, both in the world and the church, non-Christian circles, is we don't ask enough of men, I think. Like, I think I don't think so. I don't think that we ask enough of men. I think that I think men live in this kind of sliding scale between like you're either told that men are bad, right? You're this kind of like toxic figure. There's nothing really good about you. Anything that a man or a woman can do, a man can do, right? This is like what the culture says in a lot of ways. And then even in the context of the church, I mean, I think it can be kind of like it's not like in a cyclical that's been said. It's kind of like what's not being said, right? I feel like I have not, it's very rare that I go into a church and hear a sermon or a message or anything given about man's responsibility to step into the breach, right? There's great outposts of apostolates like Heroic Men, Forge, the Knights of Columbus, things that are people that are ringing the bell, kind of raising the flag, saying, "Hey, men, you're made for more." But I think on any given Sunday, most men in the pews on a church sometimes look more like a corpse, right? They look like they don't want to be there, right? There's an element of kind of like, I'm here because my wife wants me to be or whatever. And I would wager to bet that most of the men listening to this podcast don't fall into that category, right? If you're listening to this podcast, you're doing more than just sitting in the pew on Sunday, right? So this is more to what you were speaking about earlier, Dominic, of the importance of outreach, right? So you may not be that person. Like I said, I would bet that most of the men listening to this don't fall into that category. But there are plenty of men that are in your parish that do fall into that category. And there's a high call of mission that every man who comes into a relationship with Jesus receives of, my life has to be given for the sake of other people, right? So that's the whole idea of inviting other people into a small group or inviting people into discipleship is, I want you to come to know the great life that I've received. Does that make sense? I'm curious if
awesome.
what your thoughts are there.
I'm actually really curious to pull on this thread. Maybe I'll get into some trouble here and you can sort of put some guardrails on this question, but
sure.
Now let me just say it badly. So I like your point about, men showing up to church on Sundays and like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I'm convinced that one of the things that men are looking for that we need, it's because it's what I want, is a better story. Like literally what you just started with Shackleton and the Endeavor. No. What was the name of that ship? I forget. Begins with an N.
The Endurance.
Endurance. There we go.
You're very close.
That's close. That challenge to a greater story is the thing that gets us out of bed, gives us something to do. And so, okay, where am I going with this? Of her nature, the church is a feminine thing. Has a distinctly feminine charism, seeking for healing and inclusion. And it's like an open door. It's like, come here to be nourished and to be renewed so that you can go back out into the world. And I think we've lost something in trying, men specifically, men trying to find, how am I going to say this? Not a sense of purpose, but a sense of action inside, shall we say, the arms of the church. When I think it's the men's job to be out in the rest of the world. And that's where men are doing. The governments, the brotherhoods, the local councils, the ministries, and all of this stuff. I'm not saying women don't do that either, but we're here to talk about like what the men do. And I think if you don't have men, especially in the Catholic space, being told to realize that's your mission field. Your mission field is not to come to like build up the life of the church. You're here to create like a den, or to create a place where other men can come and be healed, where families can come and be healed, where women can be safe and children can be safe and the elderly and all of this. And those are massive problems to be solved. But I don't see that being routinely raised as the challenge to men. Instead, it's sit in the pews, pay your tithes, get involved in apologetics, and everything ends up being about all things that are good. But men have a distinct, not just a charism, but a problem-solving, bulldog fighting edge to get stuff done. And so what does it take? We just sit around because there's no Shackleton standing up and going, hey, if our parish is our mission field and it sort of starts here and radiates out into the families in the local area, we need to do stuff. And it needs to be more than a fish fry and more than a holy hour. Those are good things.
You're right.
But men need something else. Take that apart. Where would you go with that?
No, I think you're dead on, man. Yeah, no, that's a great thing to think about. And I think you couldn't be speaking more my language. I mean, I think the fact that men, feel kind of like, I mean, I'm there. I'm at Mass every Sunday. You're at Mass every Sunday. How often do we hear, the after Mass announcements of, we need volunteers for this, this, and this? It's like, okay, yeah, it's great. But like, I don't feel a sense of purpose or belonging or inspiration by doing that. Right. And I think if I don't, I feel like most men probably don't, right? There's like, I have a passion for the church already? How about the dude who has no passion for the church? Like the guy who's just showing up for a random Sunday or was invited by a friend to come to mass. And I think, yeah, you're right on, man. Like there's a point at which we have to understand life through the lens of mission, like the lens of adventure. I mean, John Paul II said that life with Christ is a wonderful adventure. So when you can see life through that lens of, man, okay, how do I see my life as a contribution to help ripple out? Like, to use your words of rippling, there's a point at which, like, okay, if I can reach the life of this man who is at church, right, or even not at church, like if I can reach the life of that man, the lives of his wife, the life of his children, the life of his family members, the life of his friends will be different because I reached him, right? There's this impact. There's this implication of the fact that it's kind of like, It's a Wonderful Life. You ever seen that movie?
Oh, I love
George
that
Bailey.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a phenomenal movie. Yeah. But it's like that. I mean, George Bailey, he's in this moment of distress, and he has Clarence Peabody, who's the guardian angel. He tells George, he's like, you see, George, you had a wonderful life. Like one man's life touches so many others. Like there's this importance of understanding the gravity of your life has an eternal impact. It's not just like, and I think that's if we could kind of put our finger on what is the thing that most men are living from, it's boredom. Men are bored. Like I get bored, and I feel like I have a pretty exciting job. And there's a reality that, like, this is why people watch like 2 hours of TV a day, or people's screen time is literally like 7 hours a day on their phones. It's like we live in a modern world, so we have to understand that framework, right? Like we can't just all quit the jobs that mean like we've got to do admin work or be behind our computers, or like these things actually bring value to society. So seeing like, okay, how can the current modern world still serve the intrinsic end of being able to bring value to people's lives and be on mission? I mean, that's where I think we really have to rediscover man's purpose. I mean, you can't necessarily change the environment. Like I'm sure there's people who could say, okay, I'm going to quit my job and go be a farmer or be a construction worker, or do something with my hands, or do something that I can see and impact. It's like, that's great if that's what you feel like you're called to do. But we also have to change our mindset of being able to understand, how do I approach life through the lens of, being able to impact the people that I am called to serve. So, for me personally, it's like there's, over 50 guys that I am called to be in regular contact and discipleship and, furthering their spiritual walk. And those are the guys that run the small groups here in Des Moines. Like if I lean into that instead of just kind of getting distracted by the emails, or getting distracted by the phone calls, or getting distracted by, even like social media, like those things can be a distraction. And, so I think being able to, it really comes down to discipline, asking for grace, and being able to constantly apply ourselves to that. Cause it's just not, to your point, as readily available we don't have some guy putting something in a newspaper right now of, hey, go on this Antarctic expedition and risk your life. Nor do I think we should right now.
Well, yeah, certainly not the Antarctic. Conversation for another time, but that's kind of like my personal sort of, not mission, but it's like, this is a bone I'm chewing through. It's like, how do we do that? How do we how do we bring that back, especially within the parishes? Anyhow, maybe another time. I want to go to the next segment. I'd like to learn more about you. And so the story to open that can of worms is, what was one of the most difficult so far? We're both young men, but what's been one of the most difficult decisions or moments in your life that you've ever had to endure? And then how did you endure it?
The reason I'm kind of sitting here is because there's kind of two moments that come to my mind. I would say one that is most immediately readily available is probably the one that I just went through in the last year or so. So, my wife and I have been married for about 7 years. We've got 3 amazing children. We've got a 4th on the way right now. And we had just had our daughter back in May of 2025. And so we're getting to this point where we've been away from our families for about 10 years. Both of our parents and family members are here in Iowa. We were living in central Ohio at the time, serving with a great ministry. And I think I just began to become very kind of, I became very kind of like, almost homesick for being near my family, being near, to have my kids around my parents, around my wife's parents. And there was really for like, the better half of like 4 months, I didn't really like bring this up to my wife a whole lot. Cause I think there's something of this dynamic of, we talk about leadership a little bit of how do you lead in a way that's not just like an emotional roller coaster. I think there is a call as men, I believe, that we have to be a source of stability for our wives and for our children, or for those that we lead. That it would be, I mean, we talked about Jocko Willink earlier. Like, Jocko has a lot to say on this topic of emotional regulation. That, you're a terrible leader if, when the stuff's hitting the fan, you start reacting and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? You're anxious and in the same way, like as husbands, when we're leading our wives and our children and things are kind of disturbing our heart, it doesn't mean we don't let people in, but I think there's an appropriate place and an appropriate time to be able to bring decision-making or feelings into that place. And so I kind of let this sit for about 3 to 4 months before I really started to have kind of intentional conversation with my wife, just so as not to, rock the boat a whole lot, or even give false hope, or, I think it was just kind of a prudential thing. I'm going to wait on this for a season with just the Lord and kind of say what I need to in the moment. And I brought this up to my wife of like, hey, what would you think about moving back to Iowa at some point? And at that point, I had an amazing job with a great ministry. I mean, Damascus is who I was working with before Forge, and I mean, they're an incredible mission. I was serving as the fundraising director for the last 2 years, and so I had a very stable job, great community, good friends. And so, on the surface, it was like, why would you leave this? Like, in a lot of ways, I had what most Catholic men would dream of. You've got incredible friendships, like your children are being raised around amazing people. They're having good friends. I worked at a place that we would have daily mass offered every day. We would have weekly mass together as a community. We'd have weekly times of prayer. I mean, it was, for all sense and purposes, it was like, why would you not love being here? And there was just this kind of consistent moment. And it got to this point where I had taken a fundraising trip back to Des Moines, and someone had said, hey, have you ever heard of this mission called Forge before? And I said, no, I haven't heard about it before. And they connected me with John Bishop, who's the founder of Forge. And so John and I got coffee together, and I just began to hear his story. And he worked for Focus for a ton of years, and then founded Forge in 2023. And when I was listening to him, there was almost kind of like this reprieve of truly, I mean, I didn't get into a whole lot, but this was like painstaking. Like these 4 months were like very, very hard. There were moments of like, feeling like I'm, feeling this intense sense of guilt of like, I helped to build this thing at Damascus. Like, why am I entertaining leaving? You start feeling all these moments of doubt of like, you're really going to throw your career away. You're going to do all this sorts of stuff. And when I talked to John and kind of had this understanding of what Forge does, and then shortly thereafter, we had conversations about a job opportunity with Forge of coming back to Des Moines. There was kind of this almost consolation on the other side of that struggle of like the Lord being like, no, you can trust me. Like yes, like you went through these kind of 3 to 4 months of like kind of emotional turmoil and feeling all this, like not wanting to be in this physical place anymore. It was almost kind of like a distaste for life in a lot of ways, like kind of almost like this depressive couple of months. And then, yeah, the Lord brought this opportunity into my life and said yes. And my wife and I ended up moving back to Des Moines in February. That still wasn't without its hardship, but saying goodbye to friends, saying goodbye to a place I had worked for 10 years. And then coming into this opportunity, like I think it's a testament to me, and perhaps an encouragement to those listening, of our suffering is never like unto nothing, right? There is a reality that when we suffer, when there's moments of hardship or moments of trials, like whether it's moments of anxiety or depression or financial struggle, like these things come into our life for a purpose. Like, what is God doing in the midst of that? And I think it's amazing to be on the better half of that side of kind of struggle and say, wow, Lord, like you had a purpose here. Like I'm seeing why you called me back here. I'm seeing why my children needed to be around my family members. I'm seeing why this new mission field is what you were calling me to. So I think it's probably more of like, was it the hardest situation I've ever had in my life? No. But I think it's one that's, it's probably hopefully a blessing to a lot of men to say is like your suffering, your trials, they're not unto just nothing. Like the Lord has a process for you. And I think sometimes it's to be able to be on the other side of that and see, okay, Lord, wow, you are doing something here that was for my good, for my building.
Yeah, I can actually survive that. Wow. So as you think back to like I'm sure there were like nights where you're lying awake.
Yeah.
You had no clear sense of what to do. looking at things like bank accounts and commitments and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
As you look back on that time now, if you were to draw out like a lesson,
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing now? Again, the future can change and we can all keep doing better and whatever. But as you look back at that time, what is something you never want to do again or never plan to do again or react in a certain way again?
Yeah.
And you're trying to sort of turn this into either a new identity or a new habit to
Mm-hmm.
be a more resilient, be a better man, moving into the future. What do you think that time frame, that period taught you?
Yeah, no, it's a really, really, really good question. If I had to look back on that time and kind of think about what did I learn, like what would I do differently? What is kind of the lesson? I think that would probably be, the not wishing away the moment, if that makes sense. Like I think, I hope that makes sense. It's like not wishing that time away. Like I think to your point, there were moments where I was laying in bed. There were moments where I was crying. There were moments where, you're looking at your bank statement, you're looking into the eyes of people that you love. I mean, for me, I was like looking at some of my best friends in the whole world, people I had memories with for 10 years and saying, hey, you've done nothing wrong, but I'm going to leave. Like I'm going to leave. And I was serving on the leadership team at Damascus. Like I was one of the people leading the organization and been there from kind of the founding of the organization. And it was like, I think there becomes a point at which you're just kind of like, oh, forget it. Like, I just want this to be over. Like you're kind of wishing for the days to speed up. And you just like, when you're in suffering, I mean, it's one of the most human experience, it's one of the most common human experiences is the avoidance of pain. It's like when I'm in pain, get me out of pain, get me out of suffering, get me out of this. And I think what I would like to maybe say to myself, and I don't know if I can, it's easier to say than to live by, but I would really love to not wish that period, particularly the discernment away. Like I think I can understand wanting to get, help for sickness or wanting to get, physical pain taken care of. But I think there's these moments, specifically that wrestling with God, right? They almost like that Jacob and God moment where it's like, okay, Jacob's saying, I want a blessing, God, and God like the angel wrestles with Jacob. And it's on the other side of that struggle, the other side of that wrestling, that God blesses Jacob and then bestows on him a new name and calls him Israel. And so I think we have to see those moments, especially discernment and these holy moments of struggle, these holy moments of wrestle, as God is doing something here. Like God is doing something that is transforming your very identity. So I think for me, it would be to not wish particularly the spiritual moment away. Because I think, it's a great gift when God gives us those opportunities to be able to wrestle with him.
Yeah. I love that metaphor or that vision or the throwback to the wrestling with the angel. And I was just struck by something. I'm curious where you go with this, where he's wrestling with the angel, right? And he says, give me a blessing. And he doesn't quit until he gets one. But then he has his, what is it? Like his hip is disjointed or shattered or whatever. And then he's like got a cane the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking like, if he hadn't been given that unexpected blessing, maybe call it that, or a curse, whatever. Now he's literally out of joint from who he intended to be for the rest of his life. So now he's hobbling off to meet Esau. And Esau, I'm pretty sure, if he'd come, if Jacob had been hale and hearty and 2 legs running across the river, Esau would have been swords up everybody. I knew we had problems, but this guy is like hobbling across like, can't kill an old guy. Look at my younger brother, little old guy like this or something. And then this is going somewhere. And then he has to let, like, what is it? He lets the gifts go ahead and he hangs back and goes, I need some extra time because I got to move more slowly. You all go back home. And then after they're out of sight, okay, everybody, we're going left into wherever. And then they also move somewhere else. And I'm just thinking how that disjointing that happened during that dark moment forced him into creating entirely new opportunities for his life. Whereas if that had not happened, who knows what kind of man he would have continued to be, because he spent 20 years being the strong guy who took everything that hit him as much as he hated it, fighting for what he wanted. And you could imagine him coming back to Esau and his home country and going, well, I guess I'm here to fight for what's mine. And then he loses his leg and now he can't. And he can't be the Abraham war leader, from his history. Curious if that goes anywhere coherent. This sense of like you come out of a dark moment and there's maybe for it to be a good dark moment, you begin to realize I was out of joint or I have been disjointed from what I was trying to be. I now have to do something new and I can't run the same play anymore.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, man. I mean, I think our life has to look different, right? When we have those moments of encounter with God, like, cause that's what that is, right? It's this moment of true, like, encounter with God. And I think, whatever, I'm not a scripture scholar, so I can't comment on what the deeper significance is to, Jacob walking with a limp for the rest of his days. But I think there's just a subtle truth of like, you read it at face value, like, yeah, no one can wrestle with God so intimately and walk the same way again. Like there is a reality that when we encounter God and we have a moment of wrestling out our very life before him, like we have to look different. We have to walk different. We have to talk different. Our perspective on life has to be different. And I think, yeah, I mean, maybe it's like whatever that looks like for these guys. I mean, I think about the men in the pews, but also the men that are listening. It's like that is probably one of the greatest call to actions you could have is, okay, if you feel like you're still walking like the world, if you feel like you're still talking like the world, if you still got the same perspective of the world, like wrestle with God. Like there has to, like, beg for an encounter with him. Like, God, hey, I need you to bless me. Like I need to see the world differently. I need to be able to talk differently. I need to be able to walk differently, and be in that place of wrestling. Because I think, again, to that point of earlier of like boredom, it's like this is the fight of your life. Like the stakes are high. You think about your personal holiness and the impact your life can have. It's like the enemy wants to keep you bored. Like the enemy wants to keep you sidelined. He wants to keep you apathetic. But when you can begin to see your life through the lens of a great story, we were talking about stories, it's like every person has the power of a story. Every person has the power of their own life. Like you think about that of whatever moment, whatever valley you think you're in right now. I think it's a great question of hard moments. It's like, okay, everyone's going through a struggle at points in their lives. Like, what are you going to do? Who are you going to be? Like, what juncture of that? Like, seeing it through the lens of truly like a book. Like, I love the fact that like the Bible, and I've got a bunch of books behind me. It's like these are all divided into chapters. Like they're divided into stories. And you think about like David. You see David going from this moment of, okay, he's a shepherd boy, and then he's anointed king, and then the chapter ends, and then he goes to fight Goliath, and then the chapter ends, and then he's a musician in the house of Saul, and then the chapter ends, and then he's running for his life, and then the chapter ends, and he becomes the king of Israel, and the chapter ends, and like there's these chapter moments in our life. If we can see things through the lens of story, like, okay, where am I at in this story, and how do I have a great story to tell through the gift of my life? Like you may feel like you're down and out right now, but like goodness, like what if the struggle that you were in right now was just one of the most climactic moments of the story of your life? I think that type of reframe can be so helpful for men, especially in the modern world, to think about my life has meaning, my life has purpose, my life has value, but it takes effort, Yeah,
gosh, what an awful thought. Are you sleeping through the climax of your life and you don't know it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all happening, but you're not in it. Gosh. So last two questions. Who are your heroes? Figures, especially for your manhood, your masculinity. It could be from movies, could be saints, personal people. Yeah, who are your heroes?
It's a good question, man. I mean, I think immediately kind of like a biblical hero for me, like that kind of oscillates between two individuals. So one is David. So King David, I think, is someone who I assimilate with very closely, because David has this like 3-part piece of his life, right? He's a shepherd. So he cares for the sheep. He has this great like gentleness about him, right? You can't be like an aggressive shepherd or your sheep are going to scatter. Mm-hmm. And so, there's this gentleness that he carries. So he's a shepherd. He's also a warrior, right? He kills Goliath. He also killed bears and lions that would attack his sheep. So there's also this great aggression that he has. And I think about that in my life a lot. Like I'm a very passionate individual. Like I can get very fired up about pretty much anything. But that's a gift from God, right? Like God has given me a gift of aggression. So he blesses the aggression. Like how do I steward the aggression to be the warrior that he's made me to be? And then kingship, right? There's this threefold part of it of shepherd, warrior, king. And so David lives from this like off this rule, this ruling of his life. So I think there's that, but then there's also this great empathy that I have for David and consequently for myself of David wasn't perfect. Like he wasn't, the fact that like he has this great sin on the parapet of the balcony of his estate, and he's looking down and he sees the wife of one of his men, and he sends his man to go die on the front lines, and he takes his wife as this man's wife as his own with Bathsheba, and has this great sin of infidelity. It's like, okay, maybe I've never done that in my life, but there's this empathy that I can have for this, this man who in scripture says this is a man after God's own heart, and I think that he's a hero for me because it's like, a hero of how do I constantly live from that place of wanting to be a man after God's own heart, but then also, the great humility that David has directly after the fall. Psalm 51 is one of it's an incredibly long psalm, and it's all about repentance. It's about not, oh, I'm sorry I got caught doing this. It's I want to amend my life. I want to change my life. And so I think, David's a hero for me for that reason of like a man who has great and incredible potential with his life, but also has these moments of shortcomings and failures. And I think that in a lot of ways is just kind of, a story that I can assimilate with is, I feel like I have great potential in my life, but there's these moments of shortcomings and failures and asking God, repenting to be that for me. So I think, from the history, that's one. I think additionally, there's a guy, and then I'll go to the last one, both short, a guy named Matt Schlater, who was the board chair at Damascus, who's just been a mentor for me for the last 10 years. He's an incredible man. He's probably one of my biggest heroes that I have. He's just the way he leads his life as a husband, as a father. Him and his wife have 10 kids. And it's not necessarily about the number of children they have, but it's how they've raised their children, right? So it's the fact that like when I meet these kids, I'm like, you are so unlike every other child I meet. Like you look people in the eyes, you shake their hands, you ask genuine questions about people, you serve people well. Like it's just the way that Matt and Jenny have raised their children. I'm like, they're just incredible. And so Matt is one of the big heroes in my life. And then lastly is my own dad. So I think my dad has been through just the hills and valleys of life, but he's never been down and out. And I'm a huge Navy SEAL fan. So I learned pretty much everything I can about the SEALs and follow particularly their ethos very closely. And one of the sayings that the SEALs have is never out of the fight. So you're just like, no matter how down and out you think you are, you're never out of the fight. And I think there's just been moments in my dad's life that I'm just like, man, he's just taught me you're never out of the fight. And to live from that place of...
Was your dad in the service?
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
Wow.
But just a great man. So
amazing, man. I would love to keep pulling on those threads and asking more, but we're almost out of time. So
that's right,
man. Closing question: apart from God and your family, who are you here to be, to put heroic effort into serving?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the easy answer is your kids, right? But I'm not going to go there because you said outside of family. I mean, I have like I have a picture of my son right on my desk. So it's like these little reminders of just, like this guy needs to see me. But I think honestly, it really kind of comes down to, I was doing this morning, my prayer journal is understanding my circle of influence and my circle of control. So thinking about, okay, like I have to first be able to look through my life, right? Like I have to be impacted. Sam has to be changed. And then Sam can influence his wife, and then he can influence his children, and then he has friends. But then there's like the meaning of your work. And at least for me personally, it's the men of Forge, like the men that I impact through Forge. Like I want to be a beacon of light that this is, this is what the standard is. I try to live my life in such a way where I try to live my life according to the standard, which is Jesus Christ, but then also to just be a good brother. Like, I mean, not in a way where it's like, hey, look at me, but it's like, how do I come alongside all the men here involved in Forge? And I think in the local area, I mean, there's close to 400 men that are involved in small groups just in Des Moines alone. And it's a great gift to be able to say, I want to be a brother to you. Like, I want to come alongside you. And so those are the guys that I want to kind of be heroic for, if you can't say.
Thanks for joining us. If this story connected with you, send it to someone. And if you want to chat with us about anything that we've said, send us a message at heroicmen.org/stories. Our partner at CatholicSpeakers.com has built the easiest way to book powerful Catholic speakers for your men's event. They are the #1 resource worldwide for event organizers and Catholic speakers. Book easily, confidently, and ask for several grants to support ministry to men. Visit heroicmen.org/speakers today. Come and share your journey in the Heroic Brotherhood, our online community for Catholic men like you. Get the app with the best Catholic media for men, including Heroic Men's original series, Be a Man. It's all free because an alliance of donors already paid it forward for you. Stand with us. Let's build the future of Catholic men. Will you pay it forward? $5 a month pays it forward for 5 men. Visit Heroic Men to stand with us. Because men like us We leave no man behind. Visit heroicmen.org today.